Jordan Spitters, Eximus Real Estate, Fraser Valley of British Columbia. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks,
Technical difficulties, it happens in this world, doesn't it?
Yeah, all the time. Tech's fantastic when it works.
It is. So, okay, so you're going to give us a little bit of an update. What's going on in the Fraser Valley, the Lower Mainland? Let's talk about what's happening for investors. And let's start the conversation with what's going on in the market today. Is there any hope, given the rising interest rates and the price mess that's happening, that real estate investors can see an opportunity?
Absolutely, there is. I think there's some amazing opportunities out there. So as folks know, we have increased about 400 basis points from the beginning of the year. So that equates to a roughly 32% drop in purchasing power. And depending on the market that you are looking in or that you own in, I think based on their economic fundamentals, they are in line as far as purchasing power decrease since the peak. Now, I do really want to preface that the peak was anomalous. It was way overheated, very low inventory, and people had more money than sense. So there was some crazy sales going on.
Well, I don't know if they had more money than sense, maybe a little bit of that, but they also had lower rates than ever seen before. So, that game changed really quickly, and we saw the result of that. So yes, all of that went on, and that peak was peak. It was once in a lifetime, maybe not a lifetime, but listen, it was a peak that I've certainly never seen before. And and you being in the industry have never seen anything like it.
Never. And you know what? You're right. I shouldn't say more money than sense. I think people were forced to make decisions that maybe they were, fear of missing out was really playing into that. And they were, making some hasty decisions that looking back on,
This goes back to a message that we often share, which is don't make emotional decisions. And, that is really hard to do. Ultimately, we have to make data-driven decisions, and that's the key to all of it. So, Jordan, when we look at pricing, because everybody wants to know, because all we hear about is prices coming off the cliff, and there's a real estate bubble. So let's just give some perspective. Now, I know you did a little bit of homework and said, okay, well, let's not just look at the peak. I mean, if you measure, everything against the peak, nothing looks great, but let's look at real estate for what it is, which is a long-term investment opportunity. It's a long-term game that we're playing. How do the numbers look compared to, I don't know, the past, let's say 2019? Something was kind of where we're still on a pretty good run, but nothing crazy.
So to compare, I looked through, I've got 4 markets that we're looking at here: Surrey, Langley, Abbotsford, and Chilliwack. So we're running down the valley, basically.
Yep.
So Surrey, from the absolute hottest peak, we're March for most of these, February, March, depending on the market. Surrey was down 28% from the absolute peak, but they're still up 45% from this month in 2019. So, average sale price in December 2019 was $989, versus today is still over $1.4 million. Langley down 32% from the absolute peak, with an average sale price of 1.32, but they're still up 26% from this month, 2019, where they were at an average of 1.056. Abbotsford's down 27%, with an average sale price of 1.124, but they're still up 54% from this month, 2019. And lastly, we've got Chilliwack down 23% from the peak, but still up 43% from this time, 2019.
Okay, I just have to tell you the truth, is because I live in Abbotsford, and I have no intentions of ever selling my house, but it's good to know that, my property values could be up as much as 54%. So I'm pretty happy with that. Anyways, that's a psychology, isn't it? It really has an impact on you. So when you look at the numbers today, we've got interest rates kind of going through the roof, so to speak, and quite likely even going a little bit higher. That's yet to be determined, but let's just say they go another, 50 basis points over a couple of lifts. Let's just say that. But is there opportunities now that some prices have come down and the market has slowed down? Is there opportunities really for investors in the Fraser Valley / Lower Mainland?
Yeah, I think that there are lots of opportunities for a couple of different reasons. First of all, the prices have come down, so we're getting back into cash flow ranges now, making it a little bit easier for properties that are positive cash flow, so you're not having to feed them a little bit. Now, I'm not adverse to having properties that are a little bit negative cash flow. Some of my properties are currently negative cash flow, but I understand that rates are not going to stay high forever, right? and they will come back down, and I can either refinance or, I can make adjustments as necessary. So I'm not going to all of a sudden offload it because I'm, feeding this property a little bit every month.
Yeah.
There's also some excellent opportunities in strata these days because the restrictions on rental and age restrictions have more or less been removed altogether. So age restrictions on anything under a 55 plus and rental restrictions on everything are gone completely. So there are some really, really interesting stratas that were previously non-rentable in some excellent locations that are really worth taking a look at today.
Now, when in that scenario, Jordan, what do you think the experience will be? Do you think that those prices in those buildings that are, now rentable, do you think the prices of those units will now go up because investors are going to come to them? Or what's your kind of philosophy on what will that do to the price of those units?
I think the rental restrictions removal is going to have the biggest impact on pricing. They've opened up their buyer pool significantly rather than saying 80, 90% of the market that your money's no good here, you're not welcome. Now everyone is welcome there. So more buyers, more interest, more demand is going to increase your pricing. I feel that if it's in a great location and has a great layout and it was previously unrentable, it will have a positive impact. The properties that may have been an older building that was only rentable, that was kind of their only differentiating factor. They have now had that removed, and now they're now a small fish in a very big pond. So that might negatively impact them. We're only 2 weeks into this, so we haven't quite seen the impact on it yet, but it'll be pretty interesting to watch it happen. But I do have to say there's some properties that were previously age and rental restricted, that are undervalued compared to other units in today's market.
So Jordan, when we look at it, you're an investor, you're a real estate, you're an investor focused realtor. And when you look at what's happening, in the market, one of the concerns from investors' point of view is always going to be, I got it. But what are rents, and is there still rental demand? We look at it across the country, within the real estate investment network, we are always watching it. And we also realize that things get regional. So given your kind of boots on the ground, what are you seeing in the rental market? Demand is high. Are rents still going up a little bit, or where are we in the rental market?
So demand is still high for rentals. I mean, if you have a reasonably priced, good condition, good location, you're always going to have a lineup of folks here in the Fraser Valley. We've been sub 1% for many, many years, and that simply hasn't changed. I don't believe that the rental restrictions with strata is going to increase the inventory all that much, because we don't have a great number of units that are sitting vacant that can be rented out. Maybe a few, but there won't be a glut of units all of a sudden. So what I am seeing is that rental rates have come down slightly over the last 3 months or so. The folks because there were so many sales happening at the beginning of the year, a lot of tenants were displaced. They were in the market. Landlords were taking advantage of the fact that there were a lot of free floating tenants, and they increased the rates up. So there was a bit of a peak in the rental rates around summertime, and that has come off again. But similar to the way that we had a peak in the sales prices, just because we had a peak in the rental prices does not mean that, it's significantly lower than it was. Even this time last year, I'd say we're still up, at least 20%.
It's interesting. And I think you made a really great point. I mean, economically, we know, or we believe strongly that, interest rates are not going to stay high for an extended period of time, and maybe a couple of years, 18 months. I think they're going to back off. I think economically they're going to have to. You can't tell what the Bank of Canada is going to do these days, but there's probably a pretty good chance of it. I think to your point that, number one, if we're close to cash flow now, then over the next year or 18 months, you're going to see cash flows actually increase. Rents will bump up a little bit more. I think we can be pretty confident in that. I mean, as an investor, I have to look at those factors, and those are decisions that I'm making. But based on what we're seeing, the demand and supply issue isn't going to get fixed in the near term. And, people are moving down valley, that Abbotsford, Chilliwack area, for sure, Surrey. I mean, when we look at all of those things as investors, this is, I think, a great time to be looking and really because you've got time, right? There isn't the pressure that there was 8 months ago or 6 months ago.
Exactly. This time last year, I was doing some showings at Chilliwack last week, and my clients were very interested, but they wanted an opportunity to speak to my property manager and have a couple of days to think about it. And they're getting that opportunity today. Whereas this time last year, they would not have had that opportunity. It would have been, I need to have an answer from you within the next, 12 hours because it's going to be gone.
Yeah, so when we look at, we're talking to investors primarily here, Jordan, and you've been playing the game for a long time and you're well equipped with the Eximus team. What would you want to leave investors with, as we kind of go into the holiday season, kind of Christmas, but when we look into the future, even the rest of December, but into the new year, what kind of guidance, what kind of advice or thought process would you encourage people to take on?
I think it would be the same that we would do every year. Is this is an excellent time of year to get your ducks in a row and get your financial bearings. I am looking very heavily for opportunities. I'm looking for homeowners that are maybe in a situation where they can't make their payments because they didn't do their financial due diligence. And now the interest rates have put them in hot water. There's a lot of great opportunities for you to come in as an angel investor and, not only help someone out, but also potentially make some money as well. So I am disregarding the doom and gloom. And I think there's some fantastic opportunities as we head into 2023.
That's awesome. Well, Jordan, I appreciate your time. Thanks for the update. Investors, there's still stuff going on. Don't be sitting on the sidelines when you can be out at least looking around and seeing where those opportunities show up. Jordan, you're certainly known for being able to create opportunities, and we appreciate that about you. So thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Patrick. Pleasure as always.